If someone had told me the venue would be all glass and echoes, the kind that makes footsteps sound expensive, I would have polished my lenses twice. Rain hammered softly against the windows of Nora Ellis's studio in Rainford's Capitol Hill neighborhood, a steady percussion underscoring the rapid tapping of her keyboard. At 33, she had carved out a name for herself as one of the city's most in-demand wedding photographers. The irony was never lost on her. She spent her days immortalizing other people's joy, while keeping her own heart carefully shielded. Her assistant, Tess, appeared at the office door with a quick knock. "Nora, there's someone here about the Westbridge State wedding." Nora lifted her gaze from the screen, where she'd been editing images from last weekend's ceremony. At the Fairmont Olympic, a woman in her 40s stepped inside, impeccably dressed in a charcoal business suit and carrying a leather portfolio that practically shouted money. "Ms. Ellis, I'm Diana Keene, wedding coordinator for Rowan Calloway Events." Her handshake was firm, polished, all professionalism. "We have a rather unique opportunity for you." Nora motioned toward the chair opposite her desk. "Please, have a seat." Tess mentioned Westbridge State, Napa Valley, a vineyard wedding for two very prominent clients. "The budget is substantial." Diana opened her portfolio and slid a contract across the desk. "However, there are specific confidentiality requirements. The clients value their privacy immensely." Nora scanned the document, her eyebrows rising at the figure listed under compensation. It was more than she typically made in 3 months. "This is quite generous. What exactly are the privacy requirements?" "No social media posts, no sharing of images without explicit written consent, and complete discretion regarding the identities of the couple until after the ceremony." Diana's smile was practiced, but warm. "The contract simply lists them as M&A. You'll receive full details 48 hours before the event." The photographer in Nora was intrigued. The businesswoman in her was calculating how this single job could fund her studio's expansion. "When is the wedding?" 3 weeks from Saturday. "Willow Creek Estate, about an hour north of San Francisco. You'd need to arrive Friday for the rehearsal and preparation shots." Nora found herself nodding. The terms seem reasonable. "What style are they looking for?" "Romantic, intimate, but with editorial quality. They specifically requested you after seeing your work in Rainford magazine." Diana opened her portfolio, revealing several printed photos from Nora's recent shoots. "They loved your ability to capture authentic emotion." Authentic emotion. Nora almost laughed at the irony. She'd become an expert at recognizing love in others while keeping her own heart locked away. "Since Leila, I'll need my standard deposit," Nora said, reaching for her pen. "Already arranged." Diana produced a check. "The remainder will be transferred upon completion." "Do we have an agreement?" Nora signed the contract, her neat signature sealing what she assumed would be just another job. "I look forward to working with your clients." After Diana left, Tess peeked into the office. That seemed intense. Big wedding, apparently. Nora tucked the contract into her filing cabinet. Napa Valley. Very hush-hush clients. Ooh, celebrities could be. Or just very private people. Nora returned to her computer, but found herself staring at the screen without seeing it. Something about Diana's demeanor had seemed almost careful, as if she were withholding more than just names. That evening, Nora sat in her Queen Anne apartment, a glass of wine in hand, looking out at the Rainford skyline. The city lights blurred slightly through the rain-streaked windows. She'd moved here 5 years ago after everything fell apart. After Leila, her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Riley. "Dinner tomorrow." "You've been hermiting again." Nora smiled despite herself. Riley had been her lifeline during the darkest period. After the breakup, never pushing for details, but always present when Nora needed someone. "Can't. Big wedding prep. Rain check. Always working." "When's the last time you went on an actual date?" Nora set her phone aside without answering. Dating felt like a foreign concept. She'd tried briefly about 2 years ago. A few coffee meetings, One awkward dinner, but every potential connection felt hollow compared to what she'd had with Leela. The intensity, the way they could talk for hours about everything and nothing, the way Lila's laugh could light up a room. She shook her head, annoyed with herself. 5 years and she still couldn't think about Leela without feeling that familiar ache in her chest. The Westbridge State job would be good for her. A change of scenery, a substantial paycheck, and a chance to focus on her craft. She pulled out her equipment list, methodically checking each item. 2 camera bodies, multiple lenses, backup batteries, memory cards. The ritual of preparation always calmed her. As she packed her gear, Nora found herself wondering about the mysterious M&A. What kind of love story would she be documenting? What moments would she capture that the couple would treasure for decades to come? She had no way of knowing that in 3 weeks she'd be face to face with the one person who could still make her hands shake and her carefully constructed walls crumble. The rain continued to fall against her windows, and Nora Ellis finished her wine, blissfully, unaware that her past was about to collide with her present in the most devastating way possible. Nora's flight from Rhineford to San Francisco was smooth, the morning clouds giving way to brilliant sunshine as they descended toward the Bay Area. She'd spent the week preparing meticulously, researching Willow Creek Estate, studying the layout from online photos, planning shot lists for different lighting conditions. The mystery surrounding her clients had only deepened when she received the final details 48 hours prior. The ceremony would be at sunset, reception under the stars, approximately 60 guests. And still just those initials. M&A, the rental car, a silver Honda Accord, handled the winding roads north of San Francisco beautifully. Nora had always loved this drive. The way the landscape transformed from urban sprawl to rolling hills dotted with vineyards. She'd made this journey once before, years ago, when she and Leela had taken a weekend trip to wine country. They'd been 26 and 28 then. Young and in love and convinced they had forever ahead of them. Nora pushed the memory away, focusing instead on the GPS directions and the playlist she'd curated for the drive. Indie folk mixed with classical pieces, music that wouldn't interfere with her mental preparation for the shoot. Willow Creek Estate appeared around a curve like something from a fairy tale. The main building was a restored 1920s manor house, its stone facade covered in ivy with terrace gardens cascading down toward rows of grapevines that stretched to the horizon. Nora pulled into the circular drive, noting the perfect positioning for golden hour photography. A young man in khakis and a polo shirt approached her car. "Miss Ellis, I'm Mark, the venue coordinator. Welcome to Silverbrook." "Thank you. It's absolutely beautiful here." Nora gathered her camera bag and overnight case from the trunk. "I'd love to do a quick walkthrough before the rehearsal." "Of course. The bridal party is getting settled in the guest cottages and the grooms." Mark caught himself. "Sorry. The couple is reviewing final details with Diana. Would you like to see the ceremony space first?" Nora nodded, following Mark along a stone path lined with lavender. The ceremony site took her breath away. A natural amphitheater formed by ancient oak trees with the vineyard valley spreading out below. White chairs were arranged in intimate rows, and a simple wooden arch adorned with climbing roses marked where the couple would exchange vows. "The light here at sunset will be incredible," Nora murmured, already visualizing the shots. She pulled out her phone to take reference photos, noting the angle of the late afternoon sun. The couple specifically requested this spot. Mark said they wanted something that felt private, romantic, away from the world. As they walked back toward the main house, Nora caught sight of a group of women on the terrace, champagne glasses in hand, their laughter carrying on the warm afternoon breeze. The bridal party, she assumed, from this distance. She could make out flowing dresses in soft pastels, but not individual faces. "Would you like to meet the couple now?" Mark asked. "They're in the wine cellar doing a final tasting with the sommelier." Nora's stomach fluttered with the familiar pre-wedding nerves. Meeting clients for the first time was always a delicate dance, establishing trust, understanding their vision, making them comfortable with having a camera document their most intimate moments. That would be perfect. They descended stone steps into the cool dimness of the wine cellar. The space was atmospheric with barrel-lined walls and soft lighting that would be challenging, but beautiful for photos. Nora could hear voices ahead, a sommelier explaining the notes in a particular vintage and to women responding with questions. And laughter. One of the voices made Nora stop walking. It was impossible. Her mind was playing tricks on her, influenced by being back in wine country, by the romantic setting, by memories she'd thought were safely buried. But as they rounded the corner and the group came into view, Nora's world tilted on its axis. There, elegant in a flowing cream dress, her dark hair longer than Nora remembered, but still catching the light the same way, stood Leela Rowan. She was holding a wine glass, her head tilted in concentration as she listened to the sommelier. And she was exactly as beautiful as she'd been 5 years ago. Next to her stood a tall woman with short auburn hair and kind eyes. Her arm casually draped around Lila's waist. The other bride. Nora's camera bag slipped from her shoulder, hitting the stone floor with a soft thud. Leela looked up at the sound, and their eyes met across the wine cellar. The color drained from Lila's face. The wine glass trembled in her hand, and for a moment, Nora thought it might fall and shatter on the ancient stones. Nora? Lila's voice was barely a whisper. The sommelier continued talking about tannins and oak-aging, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred. Mark looked between Nora and Leela with confusion. Nora's voice failed her. She cleared her throat, trying to summon her professional composure. "I'm Nora Ellis, your photographer." The auburn-haired woman looked between them with growing awareness. "Do you two know each other?" Leela set down her wine glass with careful precision. We used to a long time ago used to. As if for years of loving each other, of building a life together, of planning a future could be reduced to those simple words. Nora forced herself to breathe, to remember why she was here. "I should let you finish your tasting. We can discuss the photography timeline later." She turned to leave, but Lila's voice stopped her. "Nora, wait." Against her better judgment, Nora turned back. Leela had stepped forward, leaving her fiancé's side. "I didn't know," Leela said, her voice stronger now, but still carrying an undertone Nora recognized. The one that meant she was fighting to maintain control. "Diana handled all the arrangements. I had no idea you were our photographer." "Neither did I." Nora's professional mask was slipping, and she could feel the familiar ache building in her chest. "The contract just said M&A, Aaron and Leela," the auburn-haired woman said, extending her hand to Nora with a warm smile that made Nora's heart sink even further. "I'm Aaron Calloway, and you're clearly the Nora that Leela has mentioned." Nora shook Aaron's hand, noting the engagement ring, a vintage emerald-cut diamond that was absolutely perfect for Lila's taste. "She's mentioned me. Only good things," Aaron said, and her kindness made everything worse. She said, "You were an incredible photographer." I can see why she was excited when Diana said she'd booked you. Leela shot Aaron a look that Nora couldn't quite interpret. "I didn't know it was Nora when Diana mentioned the booking." The sommelier, finally sensing the tension, quietly excused himself. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the wine barrels. "I should go," Nora said, hefting her camera bag back onto her shoulder. "Let you finish your preparations. I'll be ready for the rehearsal at 5. She walked away before anyone could respond, her legs somehow carrying her up the stone steps and back into the afternoon sunlight. Her hands were shaking and she felt like she might be sick. 5 years. 5 years of carefully rebuilding her life, of learning to be alone, of convincing herself she was over Leela Rowan. And now she was here about to photograph Lila's wedding to someone else. Someone who seemed genuinely lovely, which somehow made it infinitely worse. Nora made it to her rental car before the tears came. Nora sat in her car for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel and trying to regain her composure. The afternoon sun beat down through the windshield, and she could hear the distant sounds of wedding preparations. Vendors arriving, staff setting up tables. The gentle hum of activity that always preceded a celebration. She needed to be professional. This was her job, her livelihood, her reputation. Whatever personal history existed between her and Leela, she had to set it aside and do what she'd been hired to do. But God, it hurt. Her phone buzzed with a text from Riley. "How's wine country? Getting any good shots?" Nora stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How could she explain that she was about to photograph her ex-girlfriend's wedding? That the woman she'd never quite gotten over was marrying someone else, in what looked like a perfect fairy tale setting. "Just arrived. Beautiful venue," she typed back, which was true enough. She forced herself to get out of the car and retrieve her equipment from the trunk. The familiar weight of her cameras was grounding, reminding her of who she was now. Nora Ellis, professional photographer, successful businesswoman, someone who had built a life independent of Leela Rowan. The guest cottage where she'd be staying was charming, a small stone building covered in climbing roses with a view of the vineyard. Nora unpacked methodically, hanging up her dress for tomorrow's ceremony, charging her camera batteries, organizing her lenses. The routine helped calm her racing heart. A soft knock at the door interrupted her preparations. Nora opened it to find Leela standing on the small porch, looking uncertain in a way that was achingly familiar. "Hi," Leela said softly. "Hi." Nora didn't invite her in, but she didn't close the door either. "I wanted to apologize for the surprise. I really didn't know Diana had booked you." "You don't need to apologize." Nora kept her voice carefully neutral. "It's a job. I'm here to work." Leela winced slightly at the coldness in Nora's tone. "I know this is awkward. If you want to leave, I'll make sure you're paid in full. I can call Diana and I'm not leaving." The words came out sharper than Nora intended. "I signed a contract. I honor my commitments." The implication hung in the air between them. Unlike some people, Lila's face flushed and Nora immediately regretted the barb. "I'm sorry," Nora said quickly. "That was unprofessional." "No, I deserve that." Leela looked down at her hands, twisting the engagement ring around her finger. "Nora, about how things ended between us. Don't." Nora stepped back, putting more distance between them. "Please. That was a long time ago. We're different people now, are we?" Leela looked up and Nora saw a flash of the woman she'd once known. Vulnerable, searching, achingly beautiful. "Because standing here looking at you, it doesn't feel like that long ago." Nora's resolve wavered for a moment. She wanted to ask so many questions. Why Leela had left without explanation. Why she'd never returned Nora's calls. Whether she'd ever thought about what they'd had together. But those questions belonged to a different version of herself. One who still believed in forever. "You're getting married tomorrow," Nora said instead. "To someone who clearly loves you very much. That's what matters now." "Erin is wonderful," Leela said. But there was something in her voice. A note of something Nora couldn't quite identify. "She's kind and smart and patient. Everything I thought I wanted." Thought. Nora caught the past tense, but didn't comment on it. "I should let you get back to your preparations," Nora said. "I'll see you at the rehearsal." Leela nodded, but she didn't move. "Nora, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're successful. Your work is beautiful. I've followed your career." The admission hit Nora like a physical blow. "You followed my career?" "I Google you sometimes," Leela said quietly. "I saw the Rhineford magazine feature and your website. You've built something amazing." Nora didn't know what to say to that. The idea that Leela had been keeping track of her life, even peripherally, was both comforting and devastating. "I should go," Leela said finally. "Erin is probably wondering where I am." She turned to leave, then paused. "Nora, thank you for staying, for being professional about this. I know it can't be easy." After Leela left, Nora closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. She felt like she was 18 again, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't control or understand. Her phone rang, Riley's name on the screen. "Hey," Nora answered, grateful for the distraction. "You sound weird. What's wrong?" Nora closed her eyes. Riley knew her too well. "Nothing. Just wedding prep stress. I've heard you before weddings. This is different. What happened?" Nora found herself telling Riley everything. The mysterious contract, the arrival at the vineyard, the moment she'd seen Leela in the wine cellar. Riley listened without interruption, occasionally making small sounds of sympathy or disbelief. "Jesus, Nora, what are the odds?" "Apparently higher than I thought." Nora sank into the cottage's small armchair. "I don't know if I can do this, Riley. Watching her marry someone else, capturing their happiness. It feels like torture, but you're going to do it anyway." "Yes, because you're a professional." "Because I'm a professional," Nora agreed. "And because running away won't change anything. She's still getting married. She's still chosen someone else. Whether I'm here to photograph it or not, you know," Riley said carefully. "Maybe this is what you need. Closure. A chance to see that she's moved on. That what you had is really over." Nora wasn't sure she wanted closure. Closure meant accepting that Leela was truly lost to her. That the love they'd shared was just a chapter in both their lives, rather than the whole story. "I have to go," Nora said. "Rehearsal starts in an hour. Call me tomorrow night after it's over." "I will." Nora hung up and looked at herself in the cottage's antique mirror. She looked pale, shaken, but she could fix that with makeup. She could put on her professional armor, black dress, comfortable shoes, cameras around her neck, and become Nora Ellis, wedding photographer, rather than Nora Ellis, woman with a broken heart. She had one more night to get through, and then tomorrow, she would document the wedding of the woman she'd never stopped loving to someone else. The rehearsal would be starting soon, and Nora needed to be ready to capture every moment of Lila's happiness, even if it killed her. The late afternoon light at Silverbrook was everything Nora had hoped for, golden and warm, filtering through the oak trees and casting long shadows across the ceremony space. She arrived early, using the time to scout angles and test her light meter readings. The familiar routine of preparation helped steady her nerves. Guests began arriving for the rehearsal. Family members and close friends all dressed casually but elegantly for the wine country setting. Nora recognized the type immediately. Successful professionals, the kind of people who smeared in the Hamptons and had art collections. Lila's world had always been more polished than Nora's, though she'd never made Nora feel less than during their relationship. Diana Keene appeared at her elbow, impeccably dressed as always. "How are you settling in? Is the cottage comfortable?" "Perfect, thank you." Nora adjusted her camera strap. "I've done a preliminary scout of the ceremony space. The light should be beautiful tomorrow." "Wonderful. I should mention the couple has requested minimal photography during the rehearsal itself. Just a few candid shots, nothing formal." Nora nodded, though she wondered if this was Lila's request specifically. "Of course. I'll be discreet." The wedding party began gathering near the ceremony arch. Nora recognized Erin immediately. She was wearing a flowing sundress in sage green, her auburn hair catching the light as she laughed with her bridesmaids. She had an easy confidence, the kind of person who made others feel comfortable just by being present. Leela appeared a few minutes later, and Nora's breath caught. She was wearing a simple white dress, not her wedding gown, but something that hinted at tomorrow's elegance. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she moved with the same grace Nora remembered, though there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. The officiant, a warm woman in her 50s, began organizing the wedding party. Nora hung back, using her telephoto lens to capture candid moments. Erin's mother adjusting her daughter's hair, the best man practicing his speech under his breath. Flower girls giggling as they scattered practice petals. "Leela, you'll enter from the left," the officiant was saying. "Take your time walking down the aisle. This is your moment." Nora watched through her viewfinder as Leila practiced the walk she'd take tomorrow. Even in rehearsal, in simple, everyday clothes, she was still luminous. But Nora caught what others would overlook. The way Lila's gaze kept sweeping over the gathered guests, the slight falter in her step, the way her smile seemed just a bit too practiced. Beautiful, Aaron said when Leila reached the arch. She took Lila's hands, and Nora snapped the moment. Two women in love, surrounded by family and friends on the night before their wedding. It should have been flawless, picture perfect. But Nora's photographer's eye picked up the tiny cracks no one else seemed to see. The way Lila's smile never fully touched her eyes. The faint rigidity in her body when Aaron brushed a kiss against her cheek. The split second when Lila's eyes found Nora across the ceremony space and lingered there just a heartbeat too long. Let's run through the vows, the officiant said. Just the structure. Save the real words for tomorrow. Nora lowered her camera, suddenly feeling like she was trespassing. This felt too raw, too private. She turned her attention to her gear instead, adjusting straps and checking settings, doing anything to avoid listening as Aaron spoke about love, commitment, and forever. When it was Lila's turn, her voice came out quieter, more difficult to catch. Despite herself, Nora strained to hear every word. I promise to choose you, Lila was saying. Every day, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. The sentence slammed into Nora like a physical impact. Choose you. The exact words Lila had once used with her when they'd talked about commitment. About what it meant to build a life together. Nora remembered the two of them lying in their shared bed in that cramped apartment near the university. Lila's fingers tracing idle shapes on her bare shoulder as she spoke about love being a choice, not just a feeling. I choose you, Lila had whispered back then. Every morning when I wake up, every night when I fall asleep, I choose us. Until she didn't. Nora dragged her focus back to the mechanics of her work. Tomorrow's ceremony would begin at 6. Perfect timing for that golden hour glow. She'd position herself to the left of the aisle for the processional, shift to the right during the vows, then move to the back to capture the recessional. She'd followed this choreography hundreds of times before. The rehearsal wound down as the sun dipped lower, streaking the sky with pink and gold. The wedding party drifted toward the main house for the rehearsal dinner, their voices bright with excitement about tomorrow. Nora was tucking away her equipment when she heard footsteps behind her. Nora. She turned to see Aaron walking toward her, two glasses of wine in hand. I thought you might like a drink, Aaron said, offering one of the glasses. It's been a long day. Nora accepted the wine, unsure of Aaron's intentions. Thank you. The rehearsal went smoothly. It did. Aaron sipped her wine, studying Nora with intelligent eyes. Can I ask you something? Nora's stomach tightened. Of course. How long were you and Lila together? The directness of the question caught Nora off guard. 4 years, she answered honestly. And it ended badly. It wasn't a question. Nora nodded. I thought so. Aaron's voice was kind, not accusatory. She gets this look sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching, like she's somewhere else entirely. I've always wondered who put that look there. Nora didn't know how to respond. What did you say to the woman who was marrying your ex-girlfriend, especially when that woman was being unexpectedly kind about the situation? She's lucky to have you, Nora said finally. You seem like a wonderful person. I am, Aaron said with a self-deprecating smile. I'm stable and reliable, and I make her laugh. I'm everything she says she wants. Again, Nora caught the careful phrasing. But, Nora prompted despite herself. Aaron was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the vineyard as the last light faded from the sky. But I'm not the person she dreams about. The admission hung in the air between them. Nora felt a mix of emotions. Sympathy for Aaron, confusion about why she was sharing this, and a dangerous flutter of something that might have been hope. Aaron, I'm not telling you this to hurt anyone, Aaron said quickly. I love Lila. I want her to be happy, and if marrying me makes her happy, then I'm grateful for that. But if it doesn't, Aaron met Nora's eyes. Then I hope she figures that out before it's too late. For both of us. She finished her wine and set the glass down on a nearby table. I should get back to the dinner. Thank you for the conversation, Nora, and for being professional about all this. I know it can't be easy. After Aaron left, Nora stood alone in the gathering darkness, her mind reeling. What had just happened? Was Aaron having second thoughts about the wedding? Was she trying to tell Nora something specific? Or was Nora reading too much into the words of a nervous bride who was simply being honest? About the complexities of love, Nora finished her wine and gathered her equipment. Tomorrow would bring answers one way or another. Tomorrow she would watch Leela Rowan become Leela Calloway, and then she could finally close this chapter of her life. But as she walked back to her cottage, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that the story was far from over. Nora woke before dawn, her internal clock attuned to the rhythms of wedding photography. The cottage was quiet, morning light just beginning to filter through the gauze curtains. She lay still for a moment, listening to the sounds of the vineyard waking up. Birds calling to each other, the distant hum of early morning preparations. Today was the day. In 12 hours, Leela would be married to Aaron, and Nora would have documented every moment of it. She rose and made coffee with the small machine in the cottage's kitchenette, then sat on the tiny porch to watch the sunrise paint the vineyard in shades of gold and green. The morning was perfect. Clear skies, gentle breeze, the promise of ideal lighting for the ceremony. Her phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Thinking of you today. You've got this. Nora smiled despite her nerves. Riley always knew exactly what to say. By 8 a.m., Nora was dressed and ready. Black wrap dress, comfortable flats, hair pulled back in a neat bun. She'd learned long ago that wedding photographers needed to be invisible, professional, forgettable. Today, that invisibility felt like armor. The main house was already bustling with activity. Florists were arranging centerpieces. Caterers were setting up the reception space. And Diana Keene was orchestrating everything with military precision. Nora, perfect timing, Diana said, spotting her near the entrance. The bridal parties are getting ready in separate wings. Aaron's group is in the east wing. Lila's in the west. I thought you might want to start with some getting ready shots. Absolutely. Which would you prefer I start with? Diana consulted her clipboard. Aaron's party is having breakfast on the terrace in 30 minutes. Might be nice to capture that. Lila's group is doing hair and makeup. Probably better to wait until later for those shots. Nora nodded, grateful for the reprieve. She wasn't ready to see Leela yet. Wasn't sure she could maintain her professional composure in the intimate setting of bridal preparations. The East Wing terrace was bathed in morning sunlight, and Aaron's bridesmaids were already gathered around a table laden with pastries, fresh fruit, and champagne. The mood was relaxed, joyful, exactly what Nora expected from a wedding morning. Aaron looked radiant in a silk robe, her hair in rollers, laughing at something her maid of honor was saying. Nora captured the candid moments. Mimosas being poured, someone stealing a strawberry from the fruit platter. The easy intimacy of women who'd known each other for years. Nora. Aaron spotted her and waved her over. Come meet everyone. Ladies, this is our photographer, Nora Ellis. The introductions were warm, friendly. Aaron's friends were welcoming, asking about Nora's work, complimenting her previous wedding photos they'd seen online. It was exactly the kind of easy client relationship Nora usually enjoyed. We should get some shots of you in your robe, Nora suggested to Aaron. The light is beautiful right now. For the next hour, Nora worked with practice efficiency, capturing the ritual of wedding morning preparation. Aaron getting her hair styled, the bridesmaids helping each other with jewelry. Quiet moments of anticipation and excitement. I should check on the other bridal party, Nora said eventually. Get some shots of their preparations too. Of course, Aaron said. She was in her wedding dress now, a stunning creation of silk and lace that fit her perfectly. Nora, Thank you for making this easy. I know the situation is complicated. Nora nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Erin looked beautiful, happy every inch the radiant bride. It made everything more difficult somehow. The West Wing was quieter, more subdued. Nora could hear soft music playing, and the murmur of conversation as she approached the bridal suite. She knocked softly on the door. "Come in," called a voice she didn't recognize. The suite was elegant, decorated in soft blues and whites. Leela sat at a vanity while a makeup artist worked on her face. Her hair already styled in an intricate updo that left her neck bare. She was wearing a silk robe similar to Erin's, and she looked Nora's breath caught. Leela looked exactly as beautiful as she had 5 years ago. But there was something different, a sadness around her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Nora," Leela said softly, meeting her eyes in the vanity mirror. "I was wondering when you'd make it over here." "Just getting some preparation shots," Nora said, raising her camera. "Don't mind me, but it was impossible to be invisible in the intimate space." There were only 3 bridesmaids. Leela had always preferred small gatherings, and they all seemed to sense the tension that had entered the room with Nora. Nora worked quickly, capturing the details. Leela's dress hanging by the window, her shoes placed carefully on the bed, the delicate jewelry laid out on the dresser. She tried to focus on the technical aspects, the composition and lighting, anything but the way Leela's presence filled the room. "Time for the dress," announced the wedding coordinator, a young woman who'd been helping with the morning timeline. Nora stepped back as the bridesmaids helped Leela into her gown. It was breathtaking, vintage-inspired lace with a flowing skirt and delicate beading that caught the light. Leela had always had impeccable taste, and this dress was perfect for her. But as the bridesmaids fastened the dozens of tiny buttons up the back, Nora noticed Leela's hands shaking slightly. "Nervous?" asked one of the bridesmaids. "Jenna," Nora remembered from the introductions. "A little," Leela admitted. "It's a big day." Nora captured the moment. Leela in her wedding dress, surrounded by her closest friends, preparing to marry the woman she loved. It should have been a perfect shot, full of joy and anticipation. Instead, Nora saw the tension in Leela's shoulders, the forced quality of her smile, the way her eyes kept finding Nora's in the mirror. "I need some air," Leela said suddenly. Just for a minute. She stepped out onto the suite's private balcony, and after a moment's hesitation, Nora followed. The balcony overlooked the ceremony space where staff were making final preparations. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, the arch decorated with roses and greenery. Everything ready for the 6 o'clock ceremony. "It's beautiful," Leela said, not looking at the view. "It is," Nora agreed. "You look beautiful, too." Leela turned to face her, and Nora saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Nora, I don't," Nora said quickly. "Whatever you're thinking, don't say it. Not today, but I need you to know." "No." Nora's voice was firmer now. "You're getting married in 4 hours to someone who loves you, who deserves your whole heart. Don't do this." Leela was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the vineyard. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had been different between us?" Nora's heart clenched. "Every day," she admitted. "But wondering doesn't change anything, doesn't it?" Before Nora could respond, Jenna appeared in the doorway. "Leela, the photographer wants to get some shots of you with your bouquet." The moment was broken. Leela wiped her eyes carefully, mindful of her makeup, and followed Jenna back inside. Nora remained on the balcony for a few more minutes, trying to regain her composure. 4 more hours. She could do this for 4 more hours. But as she watched the final preparations below, Nora couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The careful control she'd maintained, the professional distance she'd tried to keep, it was all starting to crumble, and she wasn't sure she could put it back together again. The afternoon passed in a blur of pre-ceremony photography. Nora captured the details that would matter years from now. The rings nestled in a vintage box, the handwritten vows folded carefully in Erin's purse, the bouquets arranged by the florist with mathematical precision. She photographed the groomsmen, Aaron's side, adjusting their ties, and the bridesmaids touching up their lipstick. But through it all, Nora felt like she was watching everything through a haze. Her professional instincts guided her movements, but her heart was somewhere else entirely. At 4 o'clock, she found herself alone in the main house's library, a quiet refuge from the wedding preparations. She was reviewing the morning shots on her camera's LCD screen when she heard footsteps, hiding out. Nora looked up to find Lila's mother, Margaret Rowan, standing in the doorway. Margaret had aged gracefully in the 5 years since Nora had last seen her. Silver hair cut in an elegant bob, wearing a navy dress that spoke of understated wealth. "Mrs. Rowan," Nora said, standing, "just reviewing some shots, making sure I have everything I need. Please sit." Margaret entered the library and closed the door behind her. "And it's Margaret." It always was. Nora remained standing, unsure of Margaret's intentions. During her relationship with Leela, Margaret had been kind but distant, polite, but never quite warm. Nora had always suspected she wasn't quite what Margaret had envisioned for her daughter. "You look well," Margaret said, settling into one of the leather armchairs. "Success suits you." "Thank you." Nora perched on the edge of a nearby chair. "You look wonderful, too." "I was surprised when Diana mentioned she'd booked you," Margaret said, her tone carefully neutral. "I wasn't sure you'd accept given the circumstances." "It's my job," Nora said simply. Margaret studied her for a long moment. "You know, I always liked you, Nora. You made Leela happy in a way I hadn't seen before, or since." The admission caught Nora off guard. "I thank you. She was different with you, more herself, if that makes sense. Less concerned with meeting expectations, more willing to take risks." Margaret's voice was thoughtful. "I was sorry when things ended between you." Nora didn't know how to respond. This conversation felt dangerous, too close to emotions she was trying to keep buried. "Aaron is lovely," Nora said carefully. "She is," Margaret agreed. "She's everything Leela says she wants. Stable, successful, from a good family. She checks all the boxes, says she wants." There was that phrase again, but Nora prompted despite herself. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, looking out the library's tall windows toward the vineyard. "But I've never seen Leela look at Aaron the way she used to look at you." The words struck Nora like a physical impact. She tightened her grip on the arms of her chair, fighting to keep her expression steady. "Mrs. Rowan, Margaret, I don't think this is appropriate. Leela is getting married into hours." "I know." Margaret's voice held a quiet sorrow. "And maybe that's for the best. Maybe safe and stable is what she needs now. Maybe what you two had was too intense to survive." "It didn't survive," Nora said flatly. "No," Margaret agreed softly. "It didn't. But not because it wasn't real." Before Nora could ask her what she meant, the library door opened and Diana Keynes stepped inside. "There you are, Nora. We need you for the first look photos." She paused, then added, "And Margaret, Leela is asking for you." The moment shattered. Margaret rose with her usual grace, smoothing the front of her dress. "It was good to see you again, Nora," she said. "Take care of yourself." When Margaret left, Nora remained seated in the quiet library a few minutes longer, trying to make sense of their conversation. What had Margaret meant, saying their relationship hadn't ended because it wasn't real? Nora could still see the ending with brutal clarity: Leela withdrawing, growing distant, and finally leaving without a word of explanation. There had been nothing unreal about the hurt that followed, but there was no time to unpack any of it now. Diana was waiting, and there was work to do. The first look was set for 5 o'clock in the vineyard's rose garden, a private moment for the brides. Before the ceremony, Nora placed herself subtly behind a trellis covered in climbing roses, telephoto lens ready so she could document everything without intruding. Aaron arrived first, radiant in her wedding gown, her face bright with anticipation. She stood with her back to the garden path, waiting for Leela to approach. When Leela finally appeared, Nora's breath caught. She was breathtaking in her vintage lace dress, dark hair catching the late afternoon light, but there was something in her face, a flicker of hesitation, a thread of sadness that Nora couldn't ignore. "You can turn round," Leela said softly. Erin turned, and her whole face lit up with joy. "Oh, Leela, you're beautiful," Nora snapped. The shot to brides seeing each other for the first time on their wedding day. It should have been perfect. Erin's joy was pure, unmistakable, everything a bride was supposed to feel. But Lila's smile looked strained, and when Erin pulled her into an embrace, Nora saw Leela shut her eyes as though it hurt. "I love you," Erin whispered, just loud enough for Nora to hear. "I love you, too," Leela replied. But the words sounded empty, practiced. Nora lowered her camera again, that same sense of trespassing washing over her. This felt too private, too raw to witness. She was about to step back and give them space when she heard Lila's voice. Stronger now. "Erin, I need to tell you something." Nora froze. Through her viewfinder, she could see Erin's face change, concern replacing joy. "What is it?" Erin asked. Leela took a deep breath, and Nora realized she was holding her own breath, waiting. Leela started, then stopped. She looked around the garden, and for a moment her eyes found Nora's hiding spot. Their gazes met across the roses, and Nora saw something in Lila's expression. A plea, a question, a moment of desperate uncertainty. Then Leela looked back at Erin and forced another smile. "I just wanted to say thank you for being patient with me, for understanding that this is all a bit overwhelming." Erin's relief was visible. "Of course, darling. It's a big day. Are you ready?" Leela nodded, though Nora could see the lie in her posture. "I'm ready." But as the two brides walked back toward the main house to prepare for the ceremony, Nora remained hidden in the rose garden, her heart pounding. Leela had been about to say something else, something important, and the look she'd given Nora in that moment of hesitation, it had been full of longing, regret, and something that looked dangerously like love. Nora checked her watch. 1 hour until the ceremony. 1 hour until Leela Rowan became Leela Calloway, and this chapter of Nora's life closed forever, unless it didn't. The golden hour light at Willow Creek Estate was everything Nora had hoped for as a photographer, and everything she dreaded as a woman. The ceremony space was transformed. 60 guests seated in neat rows, the oak trees draped with fairy lights that would twinkle as darkness fell, the arch of roses and greenery framing the spot where Leela would promise her life to someone else. Nora positioned herself to the left of the aisle, her cameras ready, her professional mask firmly in place. She'd photographed over 200 weddings, but none had felt as surreal as this one. The string quartet began playing, and the processional started. Erin's bridesmaids walked down the aisle first, elegant in their sage green dresses, followed by Lila's bridesmaids in complimentary dusty blue. Nora captured each moment, the careful choreography of a wedding ceremony, unfolding exactly as rehearsed. Then came Erin, escorted by her father, radiant in her silk and lace gown. She practically glowed with happiness, her smile genuine and bright as she walked toward her future. Nora photographed her approach, the way the light caught her auburn hair, the joy on her father's face as he prepared to give away his daughter. The music changed. Pell's canon, traditional and beautiful, and the guests rose as one. Leela appeared at the back of the aisle. Even through her camera lens, Nora felt the impact of seeing Leela in her wedding dress, walking toward a life that didn't include her. Leela was breathtaking, moving with the same grace Nora remembered, her vintage lace gown flowing behind her as she walked alone down the aisle. Her choice. She'd always been independent, but Nora's trained eye caught what others might miss. The slight tremor in Lila's hands as she held her bouquet. The way her eyes seemed to search the crowd rather than focus on Erin waiting at the altar. The pause barely perceptible when her gaze found Nora's. For a moment, time stopped. Leela looked directly at Nora, and in that look was everything they'd never said to each other. 5 years of silence, of wondering, of love that had never quite died, despite everything that had happened between them. Then Leila continued walking, and the moment was broken. Nora forced herself to focus on her job, moving to capture different angles. As Leila reached the altar, the officiant, a warm woman named Reverend Alvarez, welcomed the gathered guests and began speaking about love, commitment, and the courage it takes to choose another person every day. Marriage, Reverend Alvarez said, is not just about the love you feel today, but about the choice to keep loving even when it's difficult, even when life tests that love. Nora lowered her camera for a moment, the words hitting too close to home. She thought about what Leila had said during the rehearsal. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's difficult. The same words Leila had once said to her. Aaron and Leila have written their own vows, the Reverend continued. Aaron, would you like to begin? Aaron took Leila's hands, her voice clear and strong as she spoke about finding love when she least expected it, about building a life together, about choosing each other every day. Her words were beautiful, heartfelt, everything wedding vows should be. Nora captured the moment, but found herself watching Leila's face instead of Aaron's. Leila was listening, smiling at the appropriate moments, but there was something distant in her expression, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Leila, the Reverend prompted gently. Leila took a breath, looking down at the vows she'd written, then back up at Aaron. Aaron, she began, her voice softer than her bride's had been. When I met you, I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I had figured out how to be safe, how to protect my heart from being broken again. Nora's hands tightened on her camera. The words felt like they were meant for her, even though Leila was speaking to Aaron. You offered me stability, Leila continued, kindness, a love that felt safe and sure, and I convinced myself that safe was enough. That sure was what I needed. Aaron's smile faltered slightly, confusion flickering across her face. But standing here now, Leila said, her voice growing stronger, I realize that I've been lying to myself and to you, and that's not fair to either of us. A murmur went through the gathered guests. Nora's heart began to race. Leila, Aaron whispered, her face pale. You deserve someone who chooses you not because you're safe, but because they can't imagine their life without you. Leila said, tears beginning to fall. You deserve someone who loves you completely, without reservation, without part of their heart belonging to someone else. Leila, what are you saying? Aaron's voice was barely audible. Leila looked out over the gathered guests, her eyes finding Nora's once again. I'm saying that I can't marry you. Not like this. Not when I'm still in love with someone else. The words hit the ceremony like a bomb. Guests gasped. Someone's chair scraped against the ground, and Aaron took a step back as if she'd been slapped. I'm so sorry, Leila said, turning back to Aaron. You're wonderful, and you deserve so much better than this. But I can't promise you my whole heart when part of it has never stopped belonging to Nora. Nora felt the world tilt around her. Every eye in the ceremony space turned to look at her, and she realized she was still holding her camera, still standing in position as if this were just another wedding she was documenting. Aaron followed Leila's gaze, her eyes finding Nora's. For a moment, the three women looked at each other across the ceremony space, past, present, and the future that was suddenly uncertain. I need to go, Leila said, gathering her skirts and stepping away from the altar. She walked quickly back down the aisle, past the shocked guests, past her mother's horrified face, past everything she'd planned and prepared for. Nora watched her go, frozen in place, unsure whether to follow or stay, whether to document this moment or put down her camera and run. Aaron stood alone at the altar, her wedding dress pristine, her bouquet still in her hands, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she said to the gathered guests, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. Then she too was walking away, her bridesmaids rushing to follow her, leaving the ceremony space in chaos. Nora finally lowered her camera, her hands shaking. Around her, guests were standing, talking in shocked whispers, unsure what to do or where to go. Diana Keene appeared at Nora's elbow. Her professional composure cracked for the first time since Nora had met her. "Well," Diana said faintly, "that's a first." Nora looked toward the main house where both brides had disappeared. Her heart was pounding, her mind racing with questions and possibilities, and the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over after all. But first, she had to find Leela. Epilogue. 6 months later, Nora's studio in Rhineford was busier than ever. Her reputation enhanced rather than damaged by the viral story of the wedding. That wasn't the photographer who captured the moment, loved one. One blog had called her, though Nora knew the reality was far more complicated. She was editing photos from a recent engagement session when Tess knocked on her office door. "Nora, there's someone here to see you." Nora looked up to find Leela standing in the doorway looking nervous and hopeful, and exactly as beautiful as she had 6 months ago. "Hi," Leela said softly. "Hi," Nora replied, her heart racing. "I was wondering," Leela said, stepping into the office, "if you might be free for dinner. I have a lot to explain, and I was hoping we might have time to talk." Nora looked at her. This woman who had broken her heart, who had walked away from a wedding to declare her love, who had spent 6 months figuring out how to find her way back. "I have time," Nora said, saving her work and closing her laptop. "I have all the time in the world." Lila's smile was radiant, real in a way Nora hadn't seen since they were young and believed in forever. "There's this little Italian place I found. They have a table by the window where we can watch the rain." "I love the rain," Nora said, standing and reaching for her jacket. "I know," Leela said softly. "I remember everything." As they walked out of the studio together, Nora thought about the photos she'd taken that day at Willow Creek Estate. She'd never published them, never shared them with anyone, but she'd kept them because they told a story about love and choice, and the courage it takes to follow your heart, even when it leads you away from safety. The rain was starting to fall as they stepped onto the Rhineford street, and Nora felt something she hadn't experienced in 5 years. The possibility of a new beginning. "Nora," Leela said, taking her hand as they walked toward the restaurant. "Yes, thank you for staying, for being there when I finally found the courage to choose love over fear." Nora squeezed her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of Lila's touch. "Thank you for choosing." Behind them, the lights of Nora's studio glowed warm against the gathering dusk, and ahead of them stretched the uncertain, beautiful possibility of a love story that was finally ready to have its real beginning. The rain fell softly on the Rhineford streets, and for the first time in 5 years, Nora Ellis believed in forever again. The rain had eased by the time Nora and Leela stepped out of the restaurant that evening, but the city still shimmered with the softened glow that came after a downpour. The streets were washed clean, headlights reflected in long streaks across the pavement, and the Rhineford air carried that familiar dampness that always seemed to settle right into Nora's bones. They paused under the awning, the restaurant's warm light spilling out behind them while the night waited quiet, cool, full of possibility. Leela folded her umbrella, shaking off the droplets. "I'm really glad you came tonight," she said, her voice soft, hopeful. "So am I," Nora said, and she meant it despite the storm of nerves, the history, the ache, the fear. She meant it. For a long moment they only stood there listening to the hum of traffic and the gentle pattering of stray raindrops as they fell from balconies and awnings overhead. The city never fully slept, but tonight it felt like it was giving them space, as though even the neon signs had dimmed themselves out of respect. "Can I walk you home?" Leela asked. Nora hesitated, the kind of hesitation that wasn't a no but wasn't quite yes. She searched herself, weighed old memories against new truths. "Not tonight," she said gently. "Okay." Leela didn't flinch. She simply nodded, accepting, giving space, showing the patience she hadn't possessed 5 years ago. And that made all the difference. They hugged goodbye on the corner, a brief and careful embrace. their breaths fogging in the cool air. When they stepped apart, Nora watched Leela walk down the block toward a rideshare waiting at the curb. Leela waved through the rear window as the car pulled away. For the first time in a long time, Nora felt something inside her loosen, something knotted for years that was finally beginning to untangle. She walked home slowly, savoring the evening, the lights, the echoes of laughter spilling from open bar doors. When she unlocked her apartment, the familiar scent of coffee beans, old books, and lavender greeted her. She closed the door behind her, leaning against it for a moment, letting out a slow breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It wasn't resolution, it wasn't certainty, but it was a beginning. Life didn't suddenly become cinematic. There weren't sweeping declarations or perfectly timed reunions. Instead, there were small things, quiet messages, gentle check-ins, invitations that asked for nothing but presence. They started with late-night texts. Leela, there's a coffee shop near my place, with terrible pastries and amazing chai. Want to try it sometime? Nora, terrible pastries? Bold marketing strategy. Sure. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became walking together afterward. Walking became sitting on park benches until the cold sent them home. Sometimes they talked for hours about work, mistakes, the years between them. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. And sometimes the past resurfaced like a bruise pressed to hard. One night, sitting on a pier overlooking Lake Union, Leela exhaled shakily. I'm terrified you'll think I'm expecting us to fall back into what we used to be. Nora looked at the water. And I'm terrified that you still might. The conversation stretched, tender and raw. But they didn't leave. They stayed. They kept choosing to stay. Healing wasn't linear, but it was real. It happened in April, on a day so bright it felt almost cruel. Cherry blossoms lined the Capitol Hill sidewalks, shedding petals in gentle drifts that clung to everyone's shoes. Nora's phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. Hello, Nora? The voice was elegant, steady, and unmistakable. Aaron. Nora's stomach dropped. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, the world moving around her in streaks of color. I hope it's not inappropriate to call, Aaron said, her tone warm but careful. No, it's fine. And it was. Surprisingly. I'm in Rhineford for a conference, Aaron said, and I wanted to reach out. Not to reopen anything, just to say, thank you. Nora blinked. For what? For not running, Aaron said. For being honest even in silence. For taking care of Leela in ways I couldn't. I've had time to reflect, time to heal, and I just wanted you to know. I understand. A long pause. And I wish you well, Aaron added. Both of you. Nora felt something inside her chest settle like a window had finally been closed after years of letting in a draft. Thank you, she said sincerely. I'm glad you're okay. I am, Aaron said lightly. And I hope you both will be too. When the call ended, Nora leaned against the railing of a nearby cafe patio, letting the sun hit her face. For the first time since Silverbrook, she felt free of something she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. Closure. Unexpected. It was a Friday in late spring when it happened. The quiet shift between what they had been and what they were slowly becoming. Nora had spent the day shooting a small engagement session at Gasworks Park. The couple was young, endlessly laughing, bumping noses, tripping over their own happiness. Watching them, Nora felt no stab of jealousy. No ache of what she'd lost, only warmth. Possibility. That evening, she invited Leela over for pasta, wine, and their usual tradition of mocking the worst movies the internet had to offer. Leela showed up with a bottle of red and a cautious smile. Long day? Nora asked, passing her a glass. You have no idea. Someone from the board tried to explain queer marketing to me. Incorrectly. Nora snorted. Did you correct them? I sent them 17 articles and a PowerPoint. Terrifying. Effective. They exchanged matching grins. Dinner flowed easily, comfortable in that way only years of knowing each other could create. But later, as they sat side by side on the couch, watching an impressively awful sci-fi movie, something in the atmosphere shifted. Nora felt Lila's knee brush against hers. Small, maybe accidental, but the warmth stayed. "Can I ask you something?" Lila murmured, eyes on the TV but focus clearly fixed elsewhere. "Of course. Do you ever think about us?" "Not back then. Now." The question was careful, fragile, honest. Nora turned toward her, slow and deliberate. "Every day." Lila swallowed. "Me too." The movie continued to play, explosions lighting up the room. But in the space between them, something tender unfurled, a truth that had been waiting in the wings for a long time. "I'm not asking for everything at once," Lila said, "or for forgiveness I haven't earned. I'm here. Fully. In a way I wasn't before." Nora reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I know," she said softly. "I can see that. And what do you want?" Lila whispered. Nora's answer came out quiet, steady, undeniable. "You." Lila's breath hitched. She glanced down at their joined hands, then back up at Nora like she was glimpsing a future she'd never believed she could have. They didn't kiss, not that night. They didn't rush. But they stayed like that, hands joined, for the rest of the film. And when it was time to say goodbye at the door, Lila hesitated, brushing her thumb across Nora's palm before stepping into the hallway. It was a small gesture, and it was everything. June came with gentle warmth and clear blue skies, and with it, a quiet deepening of whatever was growing between them. They still moved slowly, deliberately, but they moved. They spent Sundays at farmers' markets, tasting berries and cheeses. They wandered through bookstores, picking out titles for each other. They took long drives to Bainbridge Island, windows rolled down, wind tangling their hair. There were hard days, too. Days when Lila spiraled, convinced she didn't deserve to be happy. Days when Nora's fear whispered that history would repeat itself. Days when the weight of everything they'd been through settled heavy on both of them. But they talked. They listened. They made room for each other's fear without letting it drive them apart. One evening, sitting side by side on Nora's balcony as the setting sun brushed the clouds in pink and gold, Lila spoke quietly. "You know, I used to think love was a straight line." Nora looked over at her. "And now I think it's a vine," Lila said. "Messy, twisting, growing. It needs care. It needs light." She paused, then smiled. "And sometimes it grows back even after you're sure it's died." Warmth spread through Nora's chest. "I like that." Yeah. They settled into an easy silence, the kind that only came with deep trust and hard-won closeness. Then, as twilight thickened and the first stars appeared overhead, Lila turned toward her. "Can I kiss you?" Nora's breath caught. Then she nodded. The kiss was soft, slow, sweet, full of years of longing and months of healing. It tasted like wine and summer air and second chances. And when they finally pulled apart, their foreheads resting together, neither of them spoke for a long time. Some moments didn't need words. By the time the leaves began to turn, their relationship had taken shape, not the shape it once had, but something new, sturdier, built with deliberate care. They spent weekends cooking together, experimenting with recipes from a tattered cookbook of Lila's grandmother's. They walked along the waterfront holding hands, no longer hesitant to be seen together. They invited friends into their shared spaces. Riley became a fixture at dinners, teasing them mercilessly while secretly cheering them on. Lila began spending more nights at Nora's apartment than her own. Her toothbrush appeared in the bathroom. A sweater draped itself over the back of Nora's desk chair. A pair of slippers embroidered with tiny cats found a home beside Nora's bed. But still, they didn't rush. They honored the pace they'd set. One night in October, while they sat together editing photos for a client, Nora noticed Lila watching her with a soft, unreadable expression. "What?" Nora asked, self-conscious. "Nothing," Leela murmured. Just appreciating the view. Nora rolled her eyes. You're ridiculous. And you're beautiful, Leela said simply. Nora flushed, turning back to her computer. But the words landed deep. Later, as rain tapped gently against the windows, Nora reached for Leela's hand, squeezing lightly. I'm glad we found our way back, she said. Me too, Leela whispered. It was Leela's therapist who suggested going back. It was Nora who agreed, hesitant but willing. And it was both of them who drove to Westbridge State together, hands occasionally brushing over the gear shift, music playing low through the car's speakers. Silverbrook looked smaller this time, less mythic, more human. They walked the gravel path slowly, breathing in the scent of grapes and earth. When they reached the oak grove where everything had changed, they stood side by side, fingers intertwined. This place took so much from us, Leela said softly. But maybe it gave us something too. What's that? Nora asked. A chance to choose differently, Leela said. To choose each other with our eyes open. Nora nodded. Do you regret any of it? Leela asked. Nora thought about it. About the pain, the years lost, the healing hard one. Then she shook her head. No, she said, because we're here now. Leela's eyes glistened. Yeah, we are. They didn't stay long, just long enough to reclaim what had once been tangled in grief and shame. When they left, the vineyard didn't feel like a wound anymore. It felt like a chapter. Closed. Turned. Done. The Rhineford winter was crisp, with pale sunlight and long shadows. In Nora's studio, warmth radiated from the soft lamps and the hum of a heater tucked under her desk. The fig tree in the corner, Leela's joke gift after they both accidentally killed a succulent, thrived. Despite their mutual lack of plant skills, Nora was finishing edits on a wedding gallery when Leela entered, cheeks pink from the cold. Hey, Leela said, leaning down to kiss her temple. I brought muffins. You're a saint, Nora said, saving her work. I've been trying to convince you of that for a year. Nora turned, tugging Leela down to sit beside her on the couch. They shared muffin, cinnamon crumble, and lemon poppy seed and flipped through the gallery together. You really do magic, Leela murmured. Look at this one. The way she's looking at her wife, you caught that. You can't catch something that isn't there. Nora said, love reveals itself. Leela rested her head on Nora's shoulder. So does fear. Nora nodded. So does healing. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in quiet and crumbs and the soft gold light of the studio. When Leela finally lifted her head, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet box. Nora froze. Leela, it's not what you think, Leela said quickly, smiling nervously. Open it. Inside was a key, simple, silver, warm from Leela's hand. I'm not asking for forever, Leela said softly. I'm asking for right now, for today, for the chance to keep choosing each other in the ordinary moments. Nora felt her eyes sting. She lifted the key, feeling the weight of it light but meaningful. Yes, she said. Of course yes. Leela's breath shuddered. She leaned in, kissing Nora softly, tenderly, like gratitude and hope and love all woven together. When they broke apart, Nora slipped the key onto her keyring alongside her studio fob and her apartment key. It looked right there, like it belonged, like they belonged. That evening, after Leela fell asleep curled against her chest, Nora lay awake listening to the rain against the windows. 5 years ago, rain had meant endings, loneliness, heartbreak, futures collapsing. Now it meant beginnings. It meant coffee dates and slow healing and laughter echoing in the kitchen while pasta boiled. It meant nights where fear loosened its grip and mornings where hope felt natural, not forced. It meant Leela's hand finding hers in the dark. It meant choosing each other not because destiny demanded it, not because pain required it, but because they wanted to. Because love wasn't a cliff or a contract or a vow whispered under a rose arch. Love was a vine, messy, twisting, resilient, growing toward the light if you gave it the chance. Nora smoothed a loose curl from Leela's forehead. feeling the gentle warmth of her breath on her fingertips. Forever, she murmured into the stillness, isn't something you promise. It's something you do. Outside, the rain continued to fall in a soft, steady hush, patient, forgiving, full of grace. And inside, Nora Ellis finally understood. She wasn't putting her faith in some abstract idea of forever. She was creating it, day by day, choice by choice, with the woman she had always loved. The woman who now, finally, fully, undeniably, loved her back.